Hello and welcome. Tonight, 48 hours to the joint session with the National Assembly, President Muhammadu Buhari meets with state governors over security challenges in the country. Federal government rejects the country's listing by the United States amongst countries guilty of violations of religious freedom. APC National Working Committee gives waiver to new members to contest for elective office, also extends tenure of caretaker committee. A 90-year-old woman makes history as first to receive Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in the UK. Plus, we'll have business, sports, and later on international news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari says federal government is considering the reopening of the country's land borders as soon as possible.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria Cricket Federation unveils Sri Lankan Azanka Gurusena as the head coach and high-performance manager for the country's national teams.
Ahead of Thursday's crucial session between the President and the National Assembly, President Muhammadu Buhari today met with state governors to discuss, among other things, security challenges in the country. The meeting with the President is coming on the heels of a resolution by the Nigeria Governors Forum over the security challenges in the country, particularly in the aftermath of the murder of rice farmers in Borno State. After the meeting, the governors refused to make comments on their discussion, while the presidency released a statement explaining that the president asked the governors to work more with traditional rulers and community members to improve local intelligence gathering that will aid the work of security agencies. He also hinted on plans to reopen the country's borders. The President's Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, gives more details on the dialogue on our program, Politics Today.
The governors of the 36 states were invited, and I think a large number of them turned up. It was not 100%, but it was near 100%, and it was across parties. They were unanimous in their commendation of the president that they asked for that meeting just 48 hours ago, and he consented, and the meeting held today. How it proceeded was that after the chairman of the Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, the governor of Ekiti State, spoke, he then invited a governor each from one geopolitical zone to speak and give an account of what was happening security-wise in their zone. So you heard from south, southwest. You heard from northeast, northwest, and north central. So one governor each gave the security account. And of course, you know what is peculiar to each zone. Banditry to northwest, insurgency to northeast, southwest, kidnapping, armed robbery, cattle rearers and farmers clashes. Each zone gave an account. And after that, Mr. President responded with the governors who gave an account. Also, it was not a complete gallop. They also recounted what was being done. And they gave credit where it was due.
Remember the sad incident that happened in Koshebe village in Borno State, where some farmers from Zabarmari were massacred by Boko Haram terrorists? The story then was that members of the community had links with the terrorists, but now they've come out to say they have nothing to do with the insurgents. The village head gave the clarification today.
Residents of Zabarmari, erstwhile farmers, cattle breeders and lovers of agrarian lifestyle. Once famous for rice production, but now in the news for the killing of farmers on their rice farm land. The village is in mourning, but the state government is here to cushion the effect of their losses.
Government has a lot of plan, a lot of durable solution to see how best we can rehabilitate them, we can heal their trauma. Then after healing of the trauma, we see how best to reintegrate them into their normal full life and to pick up from where they stop.
Women, men and children struggle for survival in the midst of plenty. But now they have a new challenge. They are unsettled by an audio message accusing them of having links with Boko Haram.
The relationship between us is like animal to hunter. That is how they chase us every day. What some persons are saying about our links with them is untrue. And we will never forgive the person that started it.
The beneficiaries are grateful for the government's gesture, but are worried about their farm produce.
Our crops have been harvested and heaped up in bundles, but the terrorists came and started burning them. Now we hear that some farms were not affected. We want government to provide security so that we can go and bring back what is in the bush.
The military has been warning residents to shun fraternity with Boko Haram, insisting it is deadly.
In Kaduna State, the government has begun the screening of youths across the 23 local government areas preparatory to the commencement of community policing. And this came to the fore during a meeting with members of the National Assembly and traditional rulers from the northern and central senatorial zones in the state, chaired by Deputy Governor Hadiza Balarabe.
Kaduna, just like many other states in the northern part of the country, is currently facing the challenges of banditry and kidnapping. This security challenge has led to the death of many residents, with socio-economic activities affected due to the inability of farmers to go to their farms.
Zongo and Kauru local government are areas.
This gathering of lawmakers, district heads, local government chairmen with the state government is to discuss how best to tackle the problems.
We have received a directive to liaise with the local government's chairman to forward the list of 50 youths, preferably those who are already in vigilant service, operations from their local governments for onward delivery to the Commissioner of Police.
After about 3 hours in a closed-door meeting, the lawmakers briefed reporters on some of the immediate and long-term resolutions reached. One of the first steps is the urgent need to recruit more youths as community policing constables.
We're looking at the temporary solution to the problem. Until we are able to have the state police, we believe we have to now work closely with the suggestion and position of Kaduna State government by making sure that we involve the community, working closely with the traditional institutions, the community leaders, as well as the political leaders. That is what we've been doing. I have no doubt in my mind we will be able to tackle the problem.
They also resolved to engage traditional rulers in the community policing arrangement, given their closeness to the people at the grassroots.
That is the issue of giving advice on the security situation and then helping government in tackling some of the issues. That's most of the things that are supposed to be done.
Residents of Kaduna are not new to such meetings, but they pray this yields the expected results of ending the spate of killings in the state.
Let's now get some more insights into the meeting between President Muhammadu Buhari and state governors on the security situation in the country. Joining us to discuss that is the security and intelligence specialist, Mr. Kabir Adamu. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10.
And thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. State governors met with the president today looking at security challenges facing the country. Do you think the security issue is getting the attention it requires?
Definitely. These are the highest levels of executive governance in the country, the president, and then the 36 governors of the state. For them to meet, over this particular issue of insecurity, it definitely shows that it's getting the requisite attention it deserves. Not too long ago, the governors met, made a demand, and of course the president responded. So it's definitely a good development.
Mr. Abudu, what approach would you recommend to the federal government for us to come out of this security situation? It's got multiple dimensions depending on what region you're looking at. So what sort of an approach do you think they should be looking at now?
This type of engagement is very good. It's the first step. The whole of governance, and I'm very happy that Mr. President is meeting the National Assembly. Now, the whole of governance needs to come on board. The role of the governors is absolutely important. They are the ones who engage more closely with the communities. They can translate. In terms of policies, we have remarkable policies in the country for tackling insecurity. I mean, I can quickly mention a few. We have the revised National Security Strategy 2019. For counterterrorism, we have the National Counterterrorism Strategy 2016. Now, all of those documents, with a lot of emphasis, remain at the federal level. So bringing in the governors would definitely help to take that to the grassroots, so that every person, including the average person in the village, understands what these documents are trying to achieve. Now, that's number one. The second point, which is absolutely important, and I'm hoping Mr. President would mention this when he addresses the Parliament, is coordination within the security agency. We have 27 ministries, departments, and agencies that are involved in security. Unfortunately, we hear more about the military. And even if we appoint superheroes as the service chiefs or members of the military, if the other 22 are not doing very well, then unfortunately we're not going to see the effect. So I'm hoping to see better coordination. Mr. President talked about the border closure and how that has an impact on security. The two agencies that have responsibility for the border are the Customs and Immigration, and they are part of that 22 I mentioned. So better coordination and, in fact, improved performance by the entire 27 is also what I'm hoping would see forward. And then lastly, we need to introduce monitoring and evaluation principles within the security sector. Introduce metrics so that we can see clearly where there is performance, and where, of course, the metrics show there is no performance, then the leadership of that organization should be changed.
You spoke about better coordination. Where does the gap lie? The president asked the governors and traditional leaders to work together. You continue to hear that call, the work at community level, etc. How do you think this synergy can be achieved? Because yes, we hear that call, but then the problem persists.
I mentioned earlier on that we've got amazing policies, but you see, those policies are just policies. The strategies, the tactical and operational issues that would need to translate those policies into this desire that we have for better coordination, I think is the area. So I would really call on technocrats. The politicians have done their own. They've provided these policies, they've had meetings, but then those meetings would remain at the level of meetings. The technocrats will need to take them and translate them into strategies, into operational documents. I mean, the community policing strategy was introduced by the revised National Security Strategy 2019. Now, the framework for implementation of that document should have been, the technocrats should have developed that framework, and it is that framework that should have, evolved the strategies, involved the operational and tactical items that would lead to an achievement. So I think that's the missing gap, and that's the area that we need to focus on at the moment. There are about 4 units within the government that are responsible for coordination in the security subsector: the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense, and then the Presidency. Now, all of this need to come together and start implementing these robust policies that we have.
All right. Thank you so much, Security and Intelligence Specialist, Mr. Kabiru Adamu. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. In part 2, after the break, APC National Working Committee gives waiver to new members to contest for elective office, also extends tenure of caretaker committee. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 48 hours to the joint session with the National Assembly. President Muhammadu Buhari meets with state governors over security challenges in the country. Federal government rejects the country's listing by the United States amongst countries guilty of violations of religious freedom. APC National Working Committee gives waiver to new members to contest for elective office, also extends tenure of caretaker committee. And 90-year-old woman makes history as she becomes the first to receive Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in the UK. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is raising concern over comments by the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, classifying Nigeria on the watch list of designated countries of concern under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. The 5-paragraph statement from the ministry reads in part, "The federal government of Nigeria received the news with surprise that a secular country under a democratic government would be so designated. Although the Nigerian state is multi-religious and multi-ethnic, the Nigerian constitution expressly states that the government shall not adopt any religion as state religion." It further says Section 38 of the Constitution guarantees that every Nigerian citizen is entitled to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, including freedom to change their religion or belief, and freedom to manifest and propagate their religion or belief, and that the country's religious liberty has never been in question. The statement adds that Nigeria remains committed to ensuring the respect and protection of all citizens' rights to religious freedom and the promotion of religious tolerance and harmony. Let's now turn our attention to politics. The All Progressives Congress National Executive Committee today announced the extension of the tenure of the party's caretaker committee by 6 months. It's also dissolved all the party's organs at polling unit, ward, local government, state and zonal levels. Our correspondent Kayla Megwa reports.
Since the dissolution of the former National Working Committee of the APC in June of 2020, the Maimala Buni-led National Working Committee has been on a reconciliation mission, and President Muhammadu Buhari commenced them at this emergency National Executive Committee meeting of the ruling All Progressives Congress.
The responsibility of our party's neck, therefore, at this meeting is to adopt and dispassionately consider all the proposals submitted by the caretaker committee and grant all the necessary approvals requested to rebuild the party.
The chairman of the NWC briefs the committee on the progress made so far, especially in reconciliation.
The NEC may also wish to recognize the new entrants and returnees to the party and equally take special note of the return of some of our members who left the party in the build-up to the 2019 elections. Similarly, National State Assembly members have been received from other political parties. To crown it all, His Excellency Dave Umahi, Governor of Ebonyi, has also left PDP and his supporters have joined our party.
5 resolutions were met at the end of the meeting. The tenure of the NWC is extended by 6 months. Waivers are granted to new party members. Chief Ntufam Hilad Etta is expelled from the party for not withdrawing his lawsuit against the NWC. The People's Democratic Party are asked not to politicize security matters, and party organs from zonal levels to polling units are dissolved.
NEC approved the immediate dissolution of the party organs at the polling unit, ward, local government, state, and zonal levels, as well as the non-National Working Committee component of the National Executive Committee, as well as their immediate reconstitution and composition of the dissolved ESCOs to serve in their respective offices in a caretaker committee capacity. The National Executive Committee of the party condemns in very strong terms the call by the PDP leadership and some of their cheerleaders for the resignation of Mr. President. NEC observes that security challenges, though regrettable, can only be addressed when all interests, civil and military, government and opposition, security forces, and indeed every citizen collaborate, irrespective of party affiliation.
The Buni-led Caretaker Extraordinary National Convention Planning Committee now has till June the 30th, 2021 to conclude its assignment as the party positions itself to remain in power even after the end of the Buhari administration. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
To legal matters, the trial of the former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, continued in Abuja today, with the prosecution calling its 9th witness against Mr. Maina. The prosecution witness, Rukaya Ibrahim, narrates how investigations by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission unraveled the ownership of 2 properties in Abuja belonging to Mr. Maina. In her testimony, the EFCC operative explains that the embattled pension task team chairman purchased a house in Jabi area of Abuja in the name of his company and paid a cash sum of $2 million. She further narrates how Mr. Maina bought another house at Life Camp area of the Federal Capital Territory and also paid a cash sum of $1.4 million. The prosecution witness further told the court how Mr. Maina operated 2 accounts with different banks without his name and picture appearing in any of the account opening packages. After listening to the evidence of the witness, the judge also rejected another request by Mr. Maina for an adjournment to prepare for his defense. The case has been adjourned to December the 9th for continuation of trial. The Lagos State Judicial Panel on Restitution for Victims of SARS and other related matters has adjourned to December the 14th for the police to bring forward its evidence in the petition of a 34-year-old trader, Ndukwe Ekekwe. Ekekwe had narrated a previous proceedings, the harrowing details of how he broke his spine sometime in 2018 when some policemen attached to the Special Anti-Robbery Squad threw him off a 2-story building complex at Alaba Market in the Ojo area of Lagos. The police disputes this evidence and says it has a video clip that shows what really transpired. It sought an adjournment which led to a heated exchange. Our judiciary correspondent Shola Shuyeli reports.
At the last sitting of the panel, the police counsel had expressed difficulty with getting his witness to testify. The chairman, Justice Doris Okuwobi, had frowned at the move to waste the time of the panel. But rather than open its defense today, the police counsel again asked for a short adjournment. This led to a heated exchange between lawyers in the case.
We have succeeded in getting a clip of what transpired. Now we are praying that this honorable panel give us the opportunity. So that will come on the next agenda with the clips. The video clip we are talking about. The Lord don't need to even take any evidence from anybody again. Because it shows everything from the beginning to the end. From the beginning to the end. My Lord, the video clip is enough to come to a conclusion, a just conclusion of this matter. Even at the point of the allegation of pushing, if you have any clip in your possession, you had ample time to bring these clips. You failed to bring them, you are not coming to give another story, trying to change the narratives. I submit that whatever submission has given is totally unfounded. I urge my lordship to reject him.
The chairman, Justice Doris Okuwobi, gives her ruling.
This petition has been before the panel since 3rd November 2020 and the 5th in the series of adjournments made by the respondent counsel. Although the panel had threatened to close the respondent's case if they fail to tender evidence today, The circumstance of their weakness coming from out of jurisdiction and the quality of evidence they claim to have will sway the mind of the panel to allowing this final adjournment to Monday, 14 December 2020. It is in the interest of justice and fair hearing for both sides to be heard where possible.
In another petition filed by Mrs. Nzube Obiechina, the younger sister of alleged kidnapper Chukwudumeme Onwamadike, popularly known as Evans, the panel has reserved its judgment. The petitioner, a school teacher, had narrated how she lost a 2-month pregnancy after she was allegedly detained and tortured for 22 days by the police, sometime in 2017, alongside her husband.
Decision in this petition is hereby reserved. The registry of the panel will contact parties and counsel of the date the panel's decision will be delivered.
The Obiechinas are seeking the enforcement of the 2 million naira compensation awarded against the police by the Federal High Court in Lagos following their ordeal. Shola Shuyeli, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, President Muhammadu Buhari says federal government is considering the reopening of the country's land borders as soon as possible. That's on Business News. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. The federal government and the organized labor comprising the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress have agreed on the reduction of the pump price of petrol by 5 naira. The decision for a review of the petrol pump price constitutes a major part of resolutions from the meeting between both parties, which held at the presidential villa last night. Meanwhile, there was no conclusion on the demand for a reversal of the electricity tariff, and the federal government says talks are ongoing with the distribution companies on the matter.
For the 6th time since the federal government announced a hike in the pump price of petrol and electricity tariff in November, members of the organized labor movement and the federal government team are meeting in this hall to continue the discussions on the demand of the workers' union. Both the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress had called for a reversal of the recent hike, threatening to embark on a nationwide strike and protest, reason why the government had to convene this meeting a month ago. At the last meeting, the federal government says it needed 1 week to make further consultations. At the opening of the rescheduled meeting, both parties expressed optimism about addressing the impasse.
I want also to ask all that will make this meeting as brief as possible, because during the period of consultation, I have the great opportunity to know that a lot of work have gone into the demands and the palliatives, and I can safely say that on the government side, a lot of goodies have been acquired for the Nigerian workers and the Nigerian people.
We are supposed to make some tremendous progress arising from the 2 meetings that have taken place. We have been well briefed, and I think items have been well articulated. My hope is that we should be able to make progress that will address this issue substantially, and also we should be able to plan ahead.
The meeting then enters into a closed-door session. When the meeting ended, both the labor unions and their federal government counterpart announced their resolution.
We have agreed that there will be a slide down on the present price of pump price of petrol, PMS, and that the price slide will get us cuts of about 5 naira per litre, and that this slide will take effect from next week, Monday, a week today.
Mutually, we have agreed that in the meantime, certainly the price have to go down, and we have mutually agreed that at least for now, it will have to go down with 5 naira. But importantly, is also to protect Nigerians from the volatility in the oil and gas market.
The reduction of pump price of petrol is only one of the demands of the organized labor movement, but the second demand, which has to do with the call to review the recent hike in electricity tariff, will have to wait till next year when the meeting will reconvene.
And as COVID-19 cases rise in Nigeria, Bua Group, one of Africa's leading food and infrastructure companies, has donated 3 state-of-the-art ambulances as well as some face masks to Bauchi State. Presenting the ambulances and face masks to Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State, Bua's Director of Government Relations, Dr. Aliu Idihong, says the donation is in line with the company's efforts to combat the spread of the virus in Nigeria.
With its reference, we are going to conclude.
3 ambulances and about 50,000 face masks. These are the items Bua Group is donating to the Bauchi State government. At a brief ceremony at the State Government House, Bua's Director of Government Relations says the donation is in line with the commitment of the chairman of Bua Group, Abdul Samad Rabiu, to support various efforts at curbing the spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria.
We want to say that Bua Group have donated in excess of 78 billion naira in the fight against COVID-19 in Nigeria. So this is an extension of what he is doing, and he assured that he is going to continue to support governments and institutions so that we will be able to stamp out COVID-19 in Nigeria, because without a healthy population, there will be no healthy government and no healthy economy.
After his speech, he proceeds to hand over the items to Governor Bala Mohammed. The governor is full of gratitude to the executive chairman of Bua Group, describing the gesture and support to Bauchi State as very timely.
It is not yet Uhuru for this COVID-19. Some of us are index cases, and I remember he even had to call me to sympathize with me. And I know with him and himself, the Bua Foundation is our own. We are very, very appreciative. Convey our deepest appreciation and tell him that we are readily available for any partnership he would want to do.
So far, Bua has committed about 8 billion naira to the fight against COVID-19 in the areas of food and medical supplies, equipment, health, infrastructure and cash donations, among others.
Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Anne Waudu.
Thank you, Ijoma. Hello and welcome to Business News. President Muhammadu Buhari says that plans are underway to reopen Nigeria's land borders as soon as possible, as the action has already yielded results. At a security meeting held in the nation's capital Abuja with the 36 state governors, President Buhari cited smuggling of weapons and drugs as major factors for the border closure since August last year. He also explains that the closure of the nation's land borders was done in the greater interest of the country, while the message has gotten to its neighbors within the West African sub-region. The annual World Economic Forum, initially scheduled to hold in Davos, Switzerland, will now hold in Singapore from May the 13th to the 16th, 2021. Organizers of the annual summit of business leaders from around the world say that the change in location was made to ensure the health and safety of its expected participants amid rising cases of COVID-19 across Europe. Latest data shows that Switzerland has 358,568 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 5,566 deaths, and an average of 5,000 new cases daily, while Singapore has now recorded 58,285 confirmed cases and 29 deaths so far since the outbreak began. And let's talk about the local bourses. Sustained the downturn in today's session into the close of trading, marking its 4th loss in 5 consecutive trading sessions within the new month. Ekaite Afia has the details.
Hello and
and welcome to the Stock Market Report. The bear has refused to release its grip on the stock market for a second day this week after it suddenly resurfaced from a short hibernation on Monday. Contrary to expectations of a rebound, today's trading on the NSE ended with a mild 0.09% additional drop on the all-share index after another round of profit-taking hit key banking, industrial, and consumer goods components. However, let's take a look at the activity chart as it shows that the volume of shares transactions still remains at a satisfactory level of 306 million shares, or 3.27 billion naira, all traded in 4,500 deals. Now, the market may be witnessing some sell pressure by short-term investors, but the fact remains that the bull is sure to renew its presence, while traders say that the market is still expecting a Santa Claus rally within this month. For now, we keep our fingers crossed on that forecast. Thanks for joining us for the Stock Market Report. I'm Akaite Afia.
And that's Business News tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Umawadu. It's back to you, Joma.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, 90-year-old woman makes history as the first to receive Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in the UK. And more from our London studio in Around the World in 5. Just stay with us. Welcome back. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration says it's found no safety concerns hindering its approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, paving way for it to be approved for emergency use in the country. And this comes as the UK today began mass vaccinations of the vaccine, with 90-year-old Margaret Keeman becoming the first person in the world to get a vaccine outside of a clinical trial. 81-year-old William Shakespeare, namesake of the famous poet and playwright, was the second person to be given the jab. The U.S. agency is yet to approve the vaccine, but has published a document stating the trial data is consistent with the recommendations set out in its emergency use guidance. Here's Simon Pusey with more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. An inquiry into the Christchurch massacre has found a series of failures ahead of the 2019 attack, but concluded the tragedy was unpreventable. The inquiry was launched after white supremacist Brenton Tarrant killed 51 people at 2 mosques in March in 2019 in New Zealand. It found he had been able to accumulate a massive trove of weapons, with authorities failing to enforce proper checks on firearms licenses. It further found officials were overly focused on Islamist terrorism. The report includes a list of recommendations which the government in New Zealand said it would all accept, including establishing a new National Intelligence and Security Agency.
While the Commission made no findings that these issues would have stopped the attack, these were failings nonetheless. And for that, on behalf of the government, I apologise.
The UK's National Health Service has delivered its first shots of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. 90-year-old Margaret Keeman became the first person to receive a COVID jab anywhere in the world. It was the first of 800,000 doses of the vaccine that will be given in the coming weeks. About 70 hospitals nationwide are gearing up to deliver vaccines this week. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has thanked the NHS and all the scientists that made it possible. Meanwhile, a 90-minute phone call between Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen failed to produce a breakthrough on a Brexit deal. Mr Johnson and Ms von der Leyen have agreed to hold a face-to-face meeting expected to happen on Wednesday or Friday. If an agreement is not reached and ratified by December the 31st, the UK and the EU could introduce import charges on each other's goods.
I think that the situation at the moment is very tricky.
Prince Harry is suing the publisher of the Mail on Sunday over an article alleging that the Duke has not kept in contact with Royal Marines. The Duke of Sussex has launched a libel action against Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Mail on Sunday. The story, published in October, claimed that Prince Harry has failed to maintain contact with the Royal Marines after he formally stepped down from his royal duties in March. Liberians are set to vote in a referendum about shortening presidential terms from 6 to 5 years. President George Weah wants presidents and lower house politicians to serve 5 years instead of 6, and senators to serve 7 years instead of 9. Critics fear he could use the constitutional change to extend the number of terms that he serves. Mr. Weir's office has denied that this was his intention. President-elect Joe Biden is expected to nominate retired General Lloyd J. Austin to be the next Secretary of Defense.
Also need to keep in mind that we are supporting and enabling this effort.
If confirmed by the Senate, General Austin would be the first African-American to lead the country's 1.3 million active duty troops. The general is known as a battlefield commander that has led the American military effort in Iraq. He is also the only African-American to have headed the U.S. Central Command, the military's top combat command, with responsibility for Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen and Syria. China's foreign minister says Beijing is open to restart its relationship with the U.S. after years of tensions. Wang Yi said in a video address at the US-China Business Council the two countries should strive to restart the dialogue and rebuild mutual trust in the next phase of Sino-US relations. The news comes after President Donald Trump's administration has announced sanctions against 14 Chinese officials over a national security law imposed on Hong Kong. All of them will be banned from travelling to the US along with their families, while any assets held in the US or in control of US persons will be blocked. The pilot who became the first person to break the sound barrier more than 70 years ago has died. Chuck Yeager went into the history books after his flight in the Bell X-1 experimental rocket plane went supersonic in 1947. He later broke several other speed and altitude records, making him the most decorated US pilot ever. He died at the age of 97. And finally, China and Nepal have agreed on how tall Mount Everest is after more than a decade of dispute and controversy. The world's highest peak, known as Sagarmatha in Nepal, stands at 8,848.86 metres, about 29,000 feet. The new height has been calculated using a combination of data received from three mechanisms: levelling instruments, a gravity meter and GPS. During Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Nepal last year, both countries agreed to jointly announce the new height, calling the peak an eternal symbol of the friendship between Nepal and China. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Let's take a look at some sports now. Here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Many thanks to Joma. The Nigeria Cricket Federation has unveiled Sri Lankan Asanka Gurusena as the head coach and high-performance manager for the country's national teams. He will take charge of Nigeria's national teams and will also act as a coach and trainer to the country's rapidly growing number of coaches. The former manager of the Sri Lanka cricket team and the regional technical consultant for Cricket Australia expressed his excitement about the future of the game in Nigeria. And Nigeria's Flying Eagles will seek a place in the semi-finals of the ongoing WAFU B Under-20 tournament on Wednesday when they confront West African rivals Ghana at the Charles de Gaulle Stadium in Porto Novo, Benin Republic. With only 3 teams in Group B and having drawn their first tie against Côte d'Ivoire on Sunday, the 7-time African champions require a win to advance to the knockout rounds. In the Champions League, Spanish side Sevilla beat Rennes to secure second spot in the group of the UEFA Champions League, that's Group E, while Chelsea retained top spot. Lazio played a 2-2 draw with Club Brugge to secure second spot, while Dortmund sealed top spot with victory over Russia's Zenit St. Petersburg. Juventus hammered Spanish powerhouse Barcelona to claim top spot in Group G. Dinamo Kiev also secured an Europa League spot with a 1-0 victory over Hungarian side Ferencváros. RB Leipzig knocked out Manchester United from the Champions League with a victory over the Red Devils. 3-2 it ended, while PSG's game with Turkish side Istanbul was interrupted after a sending-off controversy. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. That sports news is back to you, John.
Thanks, Ayotunde. And the main news again. The President today met with the 36 state governors over rising insecurity across the country. The meeting is coming about 48 hours before the President's planned meeting with a joint session of the National Assembly. Also today, residents of Zabarmari community in Borno State denied any link with Boko Haram terrorists. They also rejected claims that their deal with the terrorists went sour. And 90-year-old woman made history as the first to receive the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in the UK. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Unyato. You have a good night.